Here we are again, continuing our wall framing videos, and we're going to be talking about three different topics today. Number one, we're going to be talking about corners where two walls intersect. We're also going to be talking about interior partitions and how they connect to various walls, whether it's an exterior wall or a different interior wall. And we're also going to be talking about double top plates. So it'll be three different topics today. I am going to ask you a handful of questions, so have your paper, pen ready. So answer those questions, take a photo of it, submit it on Canvas at the end of this video. So without further ado, let's get going. So I have my wall frame stood up from the previous video. And now what I did is I built a side wall. This is the second wall coming off, and this is typically what's called a butting wall, where it butts up into this. It basically is going to come up and touch this one. And this long wall is a through wall or a passing wall because it goes all the way to the corner. It passes this, and this shorter wall goes to the corner. So I got it built, got it set up. This is where I want it to be. Now, if I fasten this in place, and I do it like this, where I built this first wall exactly like I showed y'all earlier, and then I built this wall to match up with it, there's a problem with this. First off, yeah, that'll go. When it's time to put the drywall up, I can put it on this side of my wall, and I've got studs to screw to here and at the end. But the problem is, the way I framed this, if I put drywall this way, I can attach it to these studs, everything, but there's no support over on this end. There's nothing back here to attach this drywall to, and it's going to be flappy. And that's not good. It's going to lead to cracked, not necessarily cracked drywall, but the seams, because they're going to put paper tape down the seams and cover it up with drywall compound. Well, that is going to crack over time. So you have to have something behind here to support that. Now, traditionally, there were a couple different ways to do this. Back this up. So you cannot just put one single stud on the end. It doesn't work well. Excuse me. Working outside, get all these allergies. Traditionally, most people would pack this out with 3 studs. You put 3 studs in place here, 1, 2, 3, and now what you're going to have when you bring this second wall in, now you're going to have some support for that drywall. I'm bringing you guys closer for that. So now I can take my drywall, put it up here, and as you can see, it's got something to attach to now. So I can screw this, and that's going to have this end of my drywall all set. But I'm also going to have a place for drywall to come here, and I can still attach to this stud. So that is a possibility. So that's using a couple full-length studs. Now the disadvantage to this is it uses an extra full stud, so you're using more material. It takes some more time to install properly, and the more material, so it's higher cost. Also, wood, as I talked about in the Zoom video, wood does not have the same insulating value as the fiberglass insulation goes between your studs. So it's going to be, there's going to be a thermal difference. Or like in the winter, it's going to be cold in this corner. And in summer, it's going to be hot in this corner. So that is something to consider. Now, some people will say, okay, well, we're not going to use full-length studs there. Okay? We're not going to use 2 full-length studs. What we're going to do is utilize some scrap pieces. This is one full length stud, and I have attached 3 pieces of blocking down here. Now, you get a taller wall, you're going to need more than 3 pieces of blocking. But about 12 inches long, and they're just fastened to where they're flush on here. And what this will do, this will still give you that exact same spacing. Okay? It'll still give you the same amount of drywall support on the side, but it doesn't use as much material. So you're not burning a brand new full-length stud to just put in here. You're using scrap stuff and things that you've cut off for cripple studs, things that you've cut off for rough sills, things that you've cut off for smaller, shorter walls. You're going to have a lot of scrap pieces laying around, and most people will utilize those pieces as blocking put in here. But it still has those same disadvantages. It doesn't cost as much material-wise because you use scraps, but it does take time. In fact, it actually takes more time than putting up a regular stud. So, the cost is going to be about the same. So you're paying your people to build these things, and it's still, and also when we look at it, take it away here. Now you have these gaps here, and an air gap like this is not going to insulate like the fiberglass would, or it's not even as good as a solid piece of wood. So you're still going to have this cold spot. You're still going to have the cold spots in the winter, hot spots in the summer. So let me show you the best way, which I refer to as a California corner. This guy over here. I'm going to change the side of my video here. My wall around. So what I've done in this, you're going to have to excuse the background noise. One of my neighbors is running a chainsaw. Great timing, right? Yeah. So I still had the regular end stud, but what I did is I took a second full-length stud, I turned it sideways. I made an L shape. Let me come over here and show you. So basically, I took 2 studs like this and fastened them together in an L pattern. This would be my end stud, and this is my California corner stud. So when they're fastened down together like this, and you turn it up, now you have 6 inches of space in between here and here. Well, no, that's 5 inches of space. 3.5 and 1.5, so 5 inches of space. What that does, bring our wall in, line it up. Now we have an excellent place to attach our interior drywall. Okay, fire it right along there. I can put my next piece of drywall right along here and cover all this. Everything attaches is great. But the main advantage to this, put this behind you, is now there's a gap behind here. And what I said about air not being as insulating as doesn't have the same thermal insulation as the fiberglass. But what you can do is you can take the fiberglass insulation and tuck it back in here. So now it's insulated as much as it can be. So it's an excellent system. It only uses 2 studs per corner, so it's less material. It's faster than the 3 stud or the 2 studs with blocking, and you can insulate behind it. So there's no disadvantages to this. And if you are with a company that says they do one more traditional, suggest this because it's just as strong, it's just I mean, it's faster, it's cheaper, and you can stay behind it, which is a better product in the end. We all really need to think about energy consumption and the and just the ways just to help save our planet. So, and it's going to be better for the customer in the long run. So here's our California corner. And question number one for you is, what are the advantages of the California corner compared to the other types of systems? Okay, what are the advantages to those? Advantages for California corner, the others. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you on a little journey over here. I want to talk about how you fasten these in place. Okay, so they are fastened together. This is not just a stud that you can just stick up here, and it's not something where you just nail 2 nails in the top, nail 2 nails in the bottom. That's not going to work right. To do this properly, you're going to have to, and you install these when the wall is laying down. Not in the last video, because I didn't want to get ahead of myself and talk about something where, and run that video longer. So I installed it after the fact, which can be done. But it requires 2 nails in the top going down, so they're end nailed from the top plate to the California corner stud. Also, 2 nails from the bottom coming up. And then coming down this line, this is what's known as a face. So you would drive a nail about every 12 inches coming down the length of the board. Like this. You see 1, 2, all the way down. So that's the nailing pattern. And what that's going to do, that's going to get this California corner fastened in here properly. So when you bring the second wall in place, over here so you guys can see. Now you can nail from 3 different directions. Okay? The easiest way, right, well, first off, the California corner and inside for your passing wall, that's the first way you nail. The second place is what I'll typically do if I have access to outside the building, I'll shoot in this way. So I'll shoot a nail, face nail this way about every 12 inches. But also, what you can do is you can shoot in through this inside into the passing wall inside. So you can have 3 different sets of nails connecting this together, and it makes it incredibly sturdy. If you are doing one of the more traditional ones, it's just your 3 studs are packed together, and then you would just shoot nails here. So it's not even quite as sturdy. So this is, again, California corner is the best thing to do. But my question for you, question number 2, is when you're attaching the California corner, what is the nailing pattern? Okay, when you're attaching the California corner, what is the nailing pattern? That's question number 2. You guys write that down, and I maneuver over here, talk about intersecting walls. Okay, so that covers exterior walls. When you're having 2 exterior walls meet, how do you build the corners? Now let's talk about interior partitions. And that is simply just a wall that's inside the space, that's inside the building that subdivides it. So this is one room, here's another room. That's an interior partition right here. Now, I will say some partitions are load bearing, some partitions are non-load bearing. Usually, if they are running perpendicular to your joist, like all my joists, ceiling joists and floor joists are going to be running this way. So this one's running perpendicular to that, where these joists will rest on top. That's usually going to be a load bearing wall. If it's running parallel with the joist, running the same direction, it's usually not a load-bearing wall. Sometimes it can be, usually not. But let's say I wanted to put a wall here. There's numerous things to consider. Number one, consult your plans. It's going to tell you the distance either to the inside of this wall, to the inside of the next wall. It's going to give you some kind of reference point. And it might be, as I said, from there to the inside. It might be there to the outside. It might be there to the center. And if it's the center, you got to do a little bit of math. You add or subtract 1 3/4 so you can make your mark on the edge. They'll tell you where it is. Let me show you how I mark this on the floor here. Yep. Down here, I put a red line on the floor. So I simply measured over from the end of the wall, 23 inches. I measured the end of the wall, 23 inches, made a mark here and here, snap the line between. And you can see that I put a big X on this side because this is where I want my wall to sit. And what I'll do is I'll bring that wall in place, set it right on my line, like so, and I will fasten it down, and then I'll use my level to plumb it up and make it work right. But before we get into fastening it and putting it where we need it to be, I do want to talk about ways to anchor it to this wall, because if I just bring this over here, set it up there, the only place I have to attach my interior partition to my exterior wall is at the bottom, and then I can toenail at the top. And that's not going to give me much support this way. Also, we still run into that same drywall support. Now, if you're like 2 inches away, like let's say this wall was over here, that's not really going to throw your drywall off. But if you're 5, 6 inches away, it's going to have room to flex. So there's no support for this drywall. So we have to do something just like the other corner. Now, there are 3 options that are commonly used. One is creating something called a T-post. I have one built. And there's 2 ways to build this. You can use 2 full-length studs and blocking in between, like I have pictured here, or you could use 3 full-length studs. Again, you're running into the same things as the traditional corners. Whether it's 3 full-length studs, you're using an extra stud. Whether it's blocking, you're using scraps, but it's taking a little bit more time to get it set up. But what this does, and this is, again, it's still a way a lot of people do this, is you can set this as long as it fits. You can install this, you nail it top, bottom plates, and it's set and secured. Then you bring your wall over, and it's going to tell you exactly where you want to nail to. And on both sides of your wall, you're going to have 1.5 inches to anchor drywall to here, left side and right side. Okay, so it's very sturdy, but the issue still remains is it takes time, it takes material, and you can't insulate this really well unless you drill a bunch of holes in here and shoot in expanding foam, which is costly, and it takes more time. So this isn't the best way to do this. It works, but you're going to have those cold spots unless you go through and spend the time and money insulating it. Now, you might ask, well, why don't you just put some insulation beforehand? We can't do that because if it rains, the insulation is going to wet, it's going to hold moisture, and moisture in enclosed spaces, what does that lead to? Mold. We don't want that. So, this, get up. I like to throw these out the window. Now, some people wanting something different. Oh, and by the way, let me show you this real quick. If you're going to set up a T-post, this is how you frame it. This is how you do your layouts. Okay, so this is where the edge of my wall is, and I have Here's one stud, here's my blocking, here's my other stud. And that way, when I put my wall up here, you can see how it matches up. So that you would have to lay all that out on the bottom plate. You lay it on the top plate as well. That's the last point there. Now, the other aspect, the other option is somebody says, okay, well, I want something strong. I want to be able to attach my drywall to it, and I want something faster, and I want something I can insulate. So they use a 2x6. And you would take your 2x6, and again, you would measure out where your interior wall is going to sit on here, and you would install this, just make sure it's flush with the interior or wherever this wall is going to come into. So you would install it here, 3 nails at the top, 3 nails at the bottom. You bring your wall in. And it's going to give you that space on both sides where you can attach your drywall to. It's going to support this intersecting wall enough. And it's also going to allow you to tuck drywall in behind there. So that's an option, and that works. However, the fact that it's just a single 2x6 here running this way, and there's, if this board decides to bow this way, either in or out, it can pull that drywall. It can lead to cracks in the corners. So again, this isn't the best option. So throw that one away. Your best bet, and my preferred method, is taking pieces of blocking and putting them in between your studs. Run your blocking like this, and you'll run these pieces about every 16 to 24 inches. And what this is going to do, let me bring this up here. I'll walk you through this process here in just a minute. But it gives you a place where you can attach your top and bottom plates to. Let me get you over here a little bit. Let's see here, a little bit out of frame. All right, so it gives you a place where you can attach your intersecting wall into here. So it's not going to flex this way. It's also not going to flex out because 14.5-inch board isn't going to move very much. And you can tuck your insulation behind here. It's a pretty simple method of doing this. So let me grab my drill. And you want to get these 6 to 8 inches from the top. And again, you want it flush on the inside of your wall. If you don't have it flush on the inside of your wall, you can either stick your wall out or pull it back in. And that's going to mess with the drywall. Okay. I'll come down in about the middle of this. I'm just going to put 1 screw in each of these. But you would do 2 screws here, 2 screws here. And you would continue this all the way down. As I said, get in here and then you'll be able to attach this. So let me put a screw in the bottom plate, get it lined up to where I want it to be. 2, 4, 6, so on and so forth all the way down. And what that's going to do is it's going to attach it to the subfloor. I just got one there now, just to show you here. Then I'm going to take my level, and I can plumb my wall. Once I get it where I like it, take a pencil, mark it near on one of the pieces of blocking. That way I know easy where I'm going to have to attach this. So I know. Now, going down in this piece here. So now my wall is not going left or right. It's going to stay plumb because my outside wall is already braced. It's going to stay plumb. I've got places where I can attach my drywall to. So put 2 screws here, put 2 screws there. Like, it's not going to flex a ton in the middle of this, especially if you keep these about 16 inches apart. It's not really going to flex a whole lot. And then I'm able to also put in drywall here. I can insulate behind here. So it's a system I like to do the best. And people who are forward thinking and advanced in their methods, this is usually what they do. Now, some people will take their blocking and they'll turn it sideways. They'll put it in there like this. But what that does is then the insulators are going to have to measure and cut pieces to go, and there's some insulating values that there's some things to consider there. But so if you turn them right side up or you turn them vertical, that's the best way to do it. All right. So now that is question number 3. There are 3 ways that I listed of how to connect an intersecting interior partition to an exterior wall. What are those 3 different ways I talked about? I gave you 3 different methods. So think about that. All right. Okay, y'all can see me. Good. Here we go. So next thing I'm going to be talking about is double top plates. Right now we just have a single top plate running through here. And that works to build the walls, but it's not the best thing to ensure that they stay safe, that they do not shift, and they're properly supported. Also, when you put your rafters on this, it's not quite enough beef, not enough strength, not enough material. So what we need to do is add in a double top plate. So what this will do is now, when the rafter sits on top of here, it's going to be properly supported. Also, there's a way to interlock these walls and make them set up. So now some people, if they're not trained properly, they'll just say, oh, we'll do a double top plate, which means we'll take this and just do 2 8-foot, 2 plates, build this wall, and then nail this one down to it. And then we get our second wall in. We'll build to there, and it would support everything. The problem is these walls aren't interlocked as well as they could be. So the proper way to do this is on your short wall, you're actually going to run that top plate longer. So it connects the two. And looks like I have a short stud here. These gaps like this is bad. Let's say I didn't cut all these studs. But you don't want to have gaps like this in your framing. But what I want you guys to focus on is this top plate now runs across onto this passing wall. And what that's going to allow you to do is fasten down here with 3 to 5 nails. And now this wall has extra holding power. And then what you'll do with these is you'll butt this wall right into it, or butt this double top plate right in there, and it's fastened all the way down, and you'll have another piece on the other side. Now, if you do your math properly, you do everything set up, what you can actually do is before you stand your outer wall, if you can set this up and you can nail these in place. And it's okay if there's a little bit of a gap left and right. That'll give you a little bit of wiggle room. And when you cut your double top plate for this wall, you can cut it a little bit short. It doesn't have to be exactly 3.5 inches long. 3.25 will work just fine. Because what you don't want is you don't want these walls, like these plates, sticking past outside your wall, because then you have to cut them off later. So if you have it a little bit short, that's okay. So your double top plate setup would run like this. Okay. Now, if this was an exterior wall, you would just have these plates here. You would have your double top plate to connect, and then your other top plate in here. Now, I do want to point out one more thing. I talked about this in the Zoom video, is that if your wall is long and you have splices in your top plate, you do not want to make sure, like, if I had a splice right here, meaning this is piece number 1, this is piece number 2, and they stopped right here and they joined up together like this. Okay, you don't want to have these splices right on top of each other. It doesn't add enough strength. If you're going to have a splice here, you got to make sure that you have at least 2 feet of your double top plate running that way, preferably like 4 feet, so you can go longer and attach that. But you definitely don't want to have them within a few inches or right on top of each other. So your double top plates, one passes like the short wall on the top plate will have the longer wall for the double top plate. The long wall for the top plate will have the shorter double top plate. That's the way so they can interlock. One sits on top of the other, and they'll be able to fasten together properly. Okay. All right, and my last question for you is, are the double top plates the same length as the top plates? And that's question number 4. And that's all my video. That's all my instruction for today. Next video, we're going to be talking about bracing in between the walls, plus draft stop blocking, plus some balloon frame support structure for second floor joists. So see you next time.